Hello and welcome back to Decode ISC. In part 2 of our Java series, we're going to be diving into some more Java basics, specifically tokens and data types. Now, tokens are the smallest individual units of a program that are recognized by the compiler. Now, what that means is if you have a Java program, for example, class, and then say employee, and you have inside string name, right? Very similar to an example that we did in the previous video. Now, in this particular example, what a compiler would do, the Java compiler would execute the program line by line, and then each line it would divide it into distinct elements so that it can understand the program. So the first line, it would divide class and employee as two distinct elements, and each element is what you call as a token. So simply, tokens are the smallest individual elements in a program that are meaningful to the compiler. Now, in Java, we have 5 different types of tokens: keywords, identifiers, literals, operators, and separators. Now, let's first begin with keywords. Keywords are reserved, defined words in Java that convey a special meaning to the compiler. For example, class, new, double, float, etc. are specific words that have a meaning already stored in the compiler. So when a program is being executed, the compiler already has a specific meaning, a specific function ready for these words. Now, what we need to remember is that keywords are always written in lowercase and they cannot be used as names for classes, methods, or variables. Moving on to the next one is identifiers. Identifiers are programmer chosen names used to uniquely identify elements in a program. Now, say we named our class as employee, correct? You can have some other name, Madhu. All these are programmer chosen names that are used to define a variable, a method, or a class. Now, what we need to remember here is that an identifier must always begin with a letter, underscore, or a dollar sign, and that they are case sensitive, which means a capital C and a small letter c are going to be considered as two different identifiers, and they cannot be keywords. Moving on to literals. Now, literals are fixed, constant values that do not change during a program execution. Now, there are again 5 types: Boolean literals, integer literals, floating literals, character literals, string literal, and non-literal. Now, we will be looking into exactly what each of them are in the data types that we will be discussing in the upcoming slides. Now, the other token that we need to learn is called as operators. Operators are symbols that tell the compiler to perform specific mathematical, logical, or relational manipulation on data. Now, we're going to look at the different operators that are available in Java. We begin with arithmetic operators. Arithmetic operators are your very, very classic addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, etc. Then we have our logical operators. Logical operators like and, or, not, etc. We'll be looking exactly how each of these are used in the upcoming videos. You probably would be knowing them already, but these are basically what our logical operators are. Then we move on to unary operators. This is called the decrement operator, and this is called the increment operator. Now, what they do is, decrement operator is, it takes an argument. Say if I have a minus minus, suppose a's value was 2, and I write a minus minus, what happens is a's value decreases by a single unit to become 1. Increment is the exact opposite. Say a was 2 and I write a plus plus. What an increment operator would do is it would make the value of a to 3. The next type that we need to know is ternary operators. Now, these are also called as conditional operators, and they work as a shortcut for if else construct, which we will be learning about in the upcoming videos. The next one is the assignment operator, and these are used to assign a value from the right hand side to the left hand side. Then we have bitwise and shift operators. We then have relational operators. In relational operators, you take two operands and you compare them, right? Less than, greater than, equal, etc. And then we have instance of operators. Now you'll be able to understand exactly what each of them do as we learn programming further on. Now just remember the very basic functions of all of them. Moving on to the last type of Java token are separators. Separators are symbols that define the structure, grouping, and termination of a code. They tell the compiler this is where the logical part of the code begin and end. Now we have multiple separators. This parentheses, you have the square brackets, you have your normal brackets, etc. And each of these have a very specific meaning. So for example, if you remember how we started a program was we wrote class and we had a name employee, and then we used very specifically the curly brackets to open and close your class. When we were declaring a object of a class, we wrote class and then we put these, if you remember, we wrote employee and then we put these brackets, right? These are normal brackets that we use. Now, each of these separators have a very, very specific task in Java, and you'll understand exactly how each of these are used again as we further learn programming. Now let's move on to another very, very, very important topic, and this is data types. Now, data types specify the size and types of values of data that can be stored in Java. Now, we have two main types of data types in Java. The first one being primitive data types, the other one is non-primitive data types. Primitive data types are predefined data types that store simple single values directly in memory. Now, primitive data types can be divided further into two: non-numeric and numeric. Non-numeric are Boolean and characters. Now, Boolean is of two types: true or false. Okay, true or false. Suppose you're comparing two values, for example, A equals 4 and B equals 3, and you ask the compiler A greater than 3, right? A greater than B, and you're asking this question to the compiler, and the compiler would answer as true because this statement is true, correct? That's what a Boolean data type is for. Now, a character is for characters. That is A, B, C, D, all these letters that we have. Now let's move on to the numeric type. The numeric type can be further divided into two: integer and floating points. Now, integers are -4, you could take 3, 0, etc. are all integers. Now, integers in itself are divided into 4 categories. And the reason why they divide into 4 is because each of this have a specific size. Byte is of 1 byte size. Short is for 2 bytes, int is for 4 bytes, and long is for 8 bytes. So it helps the Java compiler to allocate certain memory spaces for whatever you need to store. Floating point are for, as the name suggests, decimal values: 0.4, 5.886, etc., etc. Again, you have two. Float has 4 byte size and double stores 8 bytes. Perfect. And over here, Boolean stores, in Boolean it's interesting because Java reserves 8 bits for it, but we only use 1 bit. So just remember it like that. Java reserves 8 bits, but uses only 1 bit. For character, it's 2 bytes. Perfect. Now let's move on to the other type, the non-primitive data type. Non-primitive data types are user-defined structures that store memory address of dynamically created objects. Memory address, that's interesting. Here they've said it stores it directly in memory, but for a non-primitive data type, it stores simply the memory address. It locates to where it is, where the value is, or where the structure or the data type is saved. Now we have a couple of types: string, array, and a couple of other types, which we will be looking into further as we learn. But the main types are arrays, classes, strings, interfaces, etc. Perfect.